Blood covered my white uniform, my fingers trembling over the 17th bullet. The operating room clock read 3:15 a.m. at St. Elora Medical Center, and that soldier was dying in front of me. My name is Emma Rodriguez. I'm 22 years old, and I've been working as a nurse in the trauma unit of this Houston hospital for 2 years. That Tuesday, I was on the night shift, which had started like any other. Patient checks at 10 p.m., controlled medication at 11, routine rounds at midnight. The calm of the early morning had even allowed me to organize some overdue patient records. Then the automatic emergency doors burst open. 3 uniformed men carried in a stretcher where a U.S. Marine soldier lay. Blood was dripping from the holes in the hospital sheet, forming puddles on the linoleum floor. 40 shots. 40 holes piercing that body that was still miraculously breathing. "Where's the surgeon?" the tallest officer shouted, his military boots echoing through the empty corridor. "Dr. Harrison was called to another hospital," I replied, feeling my heart race. "Estimated arrival in 2 hours." The soldier didn't have 2 hours. His vital signs were plummeting on the monitor. Blood pressure 80/40, irregular heartbeats, shallow breathing. "Nurse, you have to do something," the officer pleaded, desperation clear in his voice. "This man saved dozens of lives in combat. He can't die here." My mind quickly processed the options. Hospital protocols prohibit nurses from performing surgical procedures without medical supervision. Violation results in immediate dismissal and possible criminal prosecution. But that man would die if I didn't act. "Bring him to room 2, I ordered, pushing the stretcher down the corridors. "Nurse Santos, prepare the surgical instruments. Johnson, monitor his vital signs. We need 10 units of O-negative blood." "Emma, you can't do this," Santos whispered, her eyes wide. "It's against all the rules." "Rules don't save lives right now," I replied, already washing my hands at the surgical sink. "This soldier has a family waiting for him." I pulled on sterile gloves as I examined the wounds. Bullets lodged in arms, legs, chest, and abdomen, some close to vital organs. Every movement needed to be calculated with millimeter precision. First bullet, right arm, 2 centimeters below the shoulder. My voice remained steady as the forceps located the projectile. The cold metal slipped between my fingers before coming out completely. One by one, the bullets were removed. Bleeding controlled with cauterization. Sutures applied with techniques I'd learned watching hundreds of surgeries. My hands worked with a precision I didn't know I possessed. 15th bullet extracted, I announced, wiping sweat from my forehead with the back of my hand. Pressure rising to 90/50. Santos kept monitoring, her expression oscillating between admiration and terror. Johnson prepared more sterile compresses. The military personnel watched everything through the operating room window, faces tense with anticipation. 20th bullet located near the liver, I murmured, calculating the entry angle. I need to be extremely careful here. The heart monitor accelerated. Blood pressure fluctuated dangerously. This was the critical moment that would determine if the soldier lived or died. 40 minutes later, the last projectile fell into the metal receptacle with a sound that echoed through the silent room. All wounds were sutured, hemorrhages controlled, vital signs stabilized. "Procedure completed," I announced, removing my bloody gloves. 40 bullets successfully removed, patient stable. The soldier was breathing regularly. His face, once pale as paper, had regained normal color. The military personnel entered the room, tears of relief streaming down faces marked by war. "Nurse Rodriguez, you saved an American hero's life," the commander said, shaking my hand firmly. "We'll never forget what you did here tonight." I walked home as the sun rose over Houston, feeling more fulfilled than ever before. I had saved a life when all protocols said to wait. I had done the right thing when it mattered most. At that moment, I had no idea that 24 hours later, my professional life would be completely destroyed. The next morning, my phone rang at 7 o'clock sharp. It was Janet from administration, her voice cold and professional, cutting through the exhaustion I still felt after only 3 hours of sleep. "Emma, I need you to come to the hospital immediately. Dr. Harrison wants to speak with you in the conference room." My stomach clenched. Something in her tone warned me that this wasn't a casual conversation. I quickly put on my uniform, still stained with small blood spatters from the night before, that I hadn't been able to completely remove in the laundry. Arriving at the hospital, I noticed strange looks from colleagues, whispered conversations that ceased when I passed through the corridors. Santos avoided my gaze when I tried to greet her. Johnson pretended to be busy with administrative papers. The conference room was full when I entered. Dr. Harrison, head of the trauma unit, occupied the head of the oval table. Beside him, Margaret Collins, director of human resources, flipped through a thick folder. Two men in suits I didn't recognize completed the intimidating group. "Sit down, Nurse Rodriguez," Dr. Harrison said, his voice devoid of its usual cordiality. "We need to discuss the events of last night." I took the indicated chair, my hands trembling slightly as I rested them on the polished mahogany table. Heavy silence hung for long seconds before Harrison continued. "You performed an unauthorized surgical procedure," he declared, opening a detailed report. "You removed 40 projectiles from a patient without proper medical supervision, violating multiple hospital protocols." "Doctor, that man was dying," I replied, keeping my voice steady. "There was no surgeon available, and you decided to take on responsibilities beyond your professional qualification." Margaret interrupted, adjusting her glasses on her nose. "You put the hospital at significant legal risk." One of the men in suits leaned forward. "I'm Jonathan Wright, the hospital's lawyer. Nurse Rodriguez, do you understand the seriousness of your actions? If anything had gone wrong during this unauthorized procedure, St. Alora Medical Center would face multi-million-dollar lawsuits." "But nothing went wrong," I argued, feeling frustration grow in my chest. "I saved that soldier's life. He's alive because of what I did." "That's irrelevant," Harrison declared, closing the report forcefully. "Protocols exist for specific reasons. Nurses don't perform surgeries, period." Margaret opened her folder and pulled out official documents. "Emma Rodriguez, for serious violation of hospital protocols, performing a medical procedure without authorization, and putting the institution at legal risk, you are dismissed effective immediately." The words hit like physical blows. 2 decades of dreams, years of study, financial sacrifices to get my nursing degree, all destroyed in one cold, calculated sentence. "Your personal belongings must be collected today," Margaret continued, pushing forms across the table. "Your access to hospital premises is revoked. Security will accompany you during the collection of your items." "You're firing someone who saved a life," I protested, my voice breaking for the first time. "How can you do this?" "We are protecting this institution," Wright replied coldly. "Your actions, though well-intentioned, created a dangerous precedent. Other employees might think they can ignore protocols when they deem it appropriate." The second man in a suit finally spoke. "I'm Robert Chen, Director of Public Relations. This situation should not be discussed with the media or social networks. Any public comments will result in legal action." I signed the dismissal documents with trembling hands, each letter seeming to seal my professional fate. The security guard accompanied me to my locker, where I collected family photos, a small plant I kept on the counter, and some personal medical books. I walked through the corridors where I had worked for 2 years, feeling looks of pity and judgment from colleagues. Some whispered among themselves, others pretended to be busy with suddenly urgent tasks. No one came forward to offer support or words of encouragement. At the exit, I met Santos in the parking lot. She looked around nervously before approaching. "Emma, I'm so sorry about what happened," she murmured. "But you understand why I can't get involved in this, right? I have a family to support." "I understand," I replied, though the betrayal hurt deeply. "Take care, Santos." The following days turned into a nightmare of isolation and self-doubt. I woke up every morning hoping it was all a terrible dream. I obsessively checked my phone, waiting for job offers that never came. News of my dismissal spread quickly through the local medical community. Other hospitals refused to consider my application. "Discipline issue," they would say politely. "Doesn't fit the profile we're looking for." My bank account dwindled rapidly. Rent, utilities, groceries, basic expenses that I had easily managed before became constant worries. I sent dozens of resumes to positions in private clinics, doctors' offices, even nursing homes. All responses were negative or, more often, complete silence. I spent hours questioning my decisions. Maybe I should have waited for Dr. Harrison. Maybe the protocols really existed for good reasons. Maybe I was just a young, arrogant nurse who thought she knew more than decades of established medical experience. But I always came back to the same conclusion. That soldier would be dead if I hadn't acted. No protocol, no hospital rule was worth more than a human life. During a night walk through my neighborhood, I met Maria, my elderly neighbor who had always admired my work at the hospital. "Emma, dear, I heard what happened," she said, gently holding my arm. "I want you to know you did the right thing. My late husband was a Vietnam War veteran. He always said that doctors and nurses who save soldiers are angels in disguise." Her words brought tears to my eyes, but also reignited a spark of conviction that had begun to fade. 3 weeks after my dismissal, I was organizing documents to apply for unemployment benefits when a deafening sound echoed over my house. I ran to the window and saw something that would change my life forever. 2 military helicopters hovered over my street, preparing to land in the small park in front of my house. Neighbors came out of their homes, pointing and photographing the extraordinary scene unfolding. The first helicopter touched down, its propellers creating a gale that bent nearby trees. Uniformed soldiers quickly disembarked, followed by a high-ranking officer whose medals gleamed under the afternoon sun. My heart pounded when I realized they were walking directly towards my door. When I saw those soldiers walking toward my door, with the officer leading the way, my heart almost stopped. The entire neighborhood was already gathered on the sidewalk, murmuring and pointing. I could barely open the door. I was trembling so much. The commander, a tall man with a firm expression and kind eyes, introduced himself as Commander Thompson of the United States Navy. He was holding a polished black wooden box, with the Navy seal engraved in gold on the lid. "Emma Rodriguez?" he asked loudly, so everyone around could hear. I nodded, trying to control my emotions. He said, with pride and solemnity, "On behalf of the United States Navy and the American people, I want to thank you for the exceptional heroism and courage you showed in saving one of our own, putting human duty above the rules, even under threat of personal consequences." The soldiers positioned themselves around me in a line, and the commander opened the box, revealing a gleaming medal. He pinned the medal on my chest, while other military personnel held a folded American flag. Then he took a thick envelope from his pocket and handed it to me. "This is a symbolic gift, a small recognition for making a difference. $100,000, but we know no money can pay for what you did." Emotion overwhelmed me. The neighborhood people started applauding, and soon cell phones were recording everything. My name immediately became a topic in all message groups. At that moment, a journalist appeared, asking how I felt. I was paralyzed, but I took a deep breath and with tears in my eyes thanked them, saying I only did what any health professional should do when a life is at risk. It didn't take long to go viral. The award video surpassed 100,000 views on the same day. News spread in local newspapers, reaching national TV in a few hours. Nurse saves military hero and receives national recognition. My message inbox became impossible to keep up with people from various parts of the United States saying they were inspired by my attitude. In the following days, the press wouldn't leave my door. I received invitations for interviews on famous programs, medical journals wanted to tell the story, and even the governor of Texas sent a letter of thanks. I received messages from hundreds of nurses, doctors, medical students, saying my courage motivated them to never abandon the human side of the profession. Some told me they were reconsidering their decisions, inspired to help even in situations where the system seemed to not allow it. The official ceremony took place in the Houston City Hall auditorium, packed to the stairs. The setting was like something out of a movie. U.S. and Texas flags, lights, cameras, and a crowd of journalists. The team who had witnessed everything that night was invited, including Santos and Johnson. When I took the microphone, I felt a chill. But I knew I needed to say something that went beyond my personal story. I spoke about how every day, health professionals make difficult decisions, and that often, the fear of institutional consequences paralyzes action. That true ethics go beyond protocols and live in small daily gestures. I said there should be more room for human judgment within institutions, and that no one becomes a good professional just by following rules, but by remembering that every life matters. When I finished, the audience rose, giving a standing ovation for minutes. I looked at Santos, who was smiling, emotional, and at Johnson, who subtly waved at me. Dr. Harrison wasn't there. The ceremony was televised live, and the video went viral again, crossing borders and reaching hospitals I didn't even know existed. In a short time, I went from a pariah of the medical class to a symbol of courage, even though I never sought notoriety. With the recognition also came opportunities. I was invited to give lectures at universities, participate in panels on medical ethics, and most importantly, I got back what I most desired, my self-respect and the confidence that I would never regret what I did. The $100,000 check was a huge help, but the most valuable thing was feeling that my story could help so many others not to be silent in the face of fear. A few weeks after that ceremony, my life took a completely unexpected turn. I received a call from the director of Harmony Regional Hospital in Colorado, inviting me to take over coordination of the trauma unit. He said he had followed my story and wanted someone with courage and leadership to inspire the team. I was surprised by the offer, but after thinking it over for a few days, I accepted without hesitation. The move wasn't easy. Leaving Houston, my friends, part of my family, and everything I knew was scary. But I was ready. I arrived in Colorado on a cold day, with snow-capped mountains in the background and a sense of newness I hadn't experienced in months. The hospital was modern, the staff warm and welcoming. I realized my story had reached them before I did. Young nurses came asking for advice. Experienced doctors treated me as an equal from day one. I felt like I was finally where I was meant to be. One afternoon, while organizing documents in my new office, I heard a knock at the door. When I looked up, I saw the soldier I had saved. He was in civilian clothes now, looking healthy, visible scars on his arms, and an expression of sincere gratitude. We stood in silence for a few seconds until he thanked me again, his voice choked. He said that thanks to my courage, he was able to return to his family, watch his children grow up, and find meaning after the trauma. We talked for a long time. He spoke about his dreams, his fears, and how that night in the hospital had changed both of us forever. I realized our paths had crossed for a greater reason. He said he planned to work to help veterans and invited me to support social projects focused on mental health for ex-combatants. I accepted, feeling that this new chapter would transform all the pain of loss, the fear of judgment, and the shame of dismissal into strength. Days passed quickly in Colorado. I transformed the trauma unit, bringing more humane practices and encouraging open discussions about ethics and compassion. I was called to join state councils, helped create training programs for young professionals, and encouraged every team member to never forget that behind every protocol, there is a person. On the first anniversary of the surgery, I returned to Houston for a meeting with nursing students, invited to inspire the new generation. I told my story, not hiding the difficulties, the pains, and the moments of doubt. I spoke about courage and integrity, and from that, I drew the certainty that, even on days when everything seems lost, it's possible to start over. Looking back, I realize I lost a lot: my job, the immediate respect of colleagues, the feeling of stability, but I gained something much bigger: a mission, a purpose. I discovered that integrity isn't about never making mistakes, but about choosing consciously and facing the consequences with your head held high. Today, when I see new professionals arriving full of doubts and dreams, I tell them that courage is not the absence of fear, but the daily choice to do what is right, even if no one is watching. In the end, it's not titles or medals that define a career, but the lives touched by our work. And above all, I understood that it's not public recognition that validates our actions, but the peace of knowing that, when it truly mattered, I was faithful to my principles. Subscribe to the channel and leave a like to access more stories like this. My life changed forever, but the feeling of a job well done accompanies me in every new challenge. And so I continue, with renewed courage and gratitude for the path I've walked, ready to inspire, lead, and remind everyone around me that integrity and compassion are always worth it.